We're sitting in a park. It's a beautiful day outside. Let's just say I'm experiencing some microdose effects right now. That's all we'll say. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah,
And
Prince just read a beautiful poem.
I wrote a poem. And maybe just for a little bit of backstory, I have loved writing since I was like 15. And I don't think I really started writing poetry until college. And so whenever I do write it, it really takes me back to, I guess, a more younger version of myself, a more yearning version, but this is a poem I call The Table. Who shall bury the dead, my friends, when I become them? I ask of my lover, no answer back. It is late and the lights are flickering as I set the table. We are toasting to the past, but they have no words. They cannot speak, unless it is the newspaper or some faded fable to go down in history. So no, we will not share food at God's table, reminiscing on skinned knees or caught fireflies as children. To put it different, a skinned knee becomes a bomb, a boot on my back, Flint, Michigan, or Hiroshima, or last Friday, or today. I don't know, yet I do. My lover won't speak. In fact, the table is gone, and I realize my lover has been dead all along. His mouth the gaping hole of destruction that took me and you and it. What I remember is softness, yet what you promised is death. I wrote that. Um, I like poetry where the poem is directed at someone or something. There's a question being posed. I also love the idea of writing to America, and personalizing America through a variety of things. I've written poems in past where America is a lover or your mother, or you're writing to yourself about America. Like I just think there are a lot of lenses that we can unpack our many relationships with this country through. Um, and then I don't know, what I remember is softness, what you promised is death. Like, I don't know. Part of me just feels like, isn't that the fucking black experience? I don't know, like
Something
like when we like and for context, earlier today, we were playing an episode that we're still probably gonna do. For context, recently in Cincinnati, Ohio, there was an instance where Cincinnati police shot and killed an 18-year-old named Ryan Hinton. And his family promptly saw the body camera footage from the cops, and his father went out and murdered a cop the next day. And there's been all sorts of responses, but one of them that I was
allegedly.
reading was allegedly, yeah.
He allegedly.
I
I
mean,
mean, we all know what
the way he
we
walked
all
into
know what
court, I'm
I
like,
wanted.
I
I
don't
mean,
know. I mean, to
ain't
me,
no
I'm like,
grievances with a mistake. You gotta
I
own
mean,
your
he
shit.
could plead not guilty. Yeah, I mean, he deserves to plead not guilty, but the way he walked into that court, I'm like, oh.
We all know. I'll just say I am not unbiased. I wish that he got some retribution. I
Oh
wish it
yeah,
was a
yeah.
retribution killing. Legally, I don't know what it was,
I
and
mean,
that's not my court of that's not my court of play. But my role to play as the anarchist propagandist is pig down for one of ours down. Bring
yeah.
the BLA slogans back.
And I mean, yeah.
That's my opinion on it.
I d-
Because I don't care what the actual facts are. The facts are if you take a zoom out on all the data, incidents like this happen, too many pigs aren't dying
yeah.
from the amount that the community is being attacked. Like when you look at how much they also fearmonger and complain about this, it's
Yeah.
disgusting. When you
They
look at
they
how much they
they
kill,
they get to hyperbolize when these things when cops get to hyperbolize when this happens to them, because it's been a part of their whole like campaign. Like
and
they're
if you
trying to make their things that happen to them a hate crime. Remember that?
they doesn't even happen that often. You're more likely to die as a pizza delivery driver from aggression
Yeah.
than to even die as a cop. And then when you go to those dead cop websites and you look at what's actually killing them the highest, it's COVID-19.
Mm,
It's sickness. It's not getting shot in the line of duty, that's actually very, very rare for a cop.
Yeah.
So when they do all this fucking fear mongering, it's irritating. Like 1,000 people get killed by the cops every year that are recorded,
Yeah.
that are able to be recorded. And that's not, like, not even compiling all the grassroots civil human rights watches that Black
Yeah.
communities have done for their whole time. Like,
Well, I guess the question I've been thinking of is, like we were talking about this case earlier and talking about all these different things. And then I just simply thought of the question, why does the state argue that a cop has a right to shoot someone who's running away, who's trying to flee? Like, I think that's the part of the case that
because they're a
confuses
larger
me.
threat to the community
Yeah.
once we deem them
Criminal.
criminal. Yeah, once we deem them a threat.
Yeah.
Because even in this case alone, allegedly stolen vehicle, 4 people run out, allegedly a gun gets dropped. Now they're scared. Now they're scared. Now
The
they're
gun wasn't
terrified.
even used. Oh, God, yeah.
That's why when bro was sitting there crying, he tripped and fell. He tripped and fell. After reading the transcript, I was like, hell yeah, he was scared. And he tripped and fell. Because I ran from the cops. I'm like, I have to be real, real careful about how I go to approach this cop and turn myself in. Because if not,
That's what's both scary about what happened to Ryan and what's, I guess, inspiring about what his dad did, in the sense of, I think every Black person out there can grasp, you no matter what you do, you might not even make it home. Like, and then it's like, fuck it. Why not go out how you need to, in style or whatever it is? And then the aftermath, like, what is the aftermath? Do we get an aftermath? Are we forced to live in the state's aftermath? Or
in
do
the
we get to
state's
determine
perception of
the
justice,
aftermath for ourselves? Like, I think it's ridiculous for the state to resort to all these forms of violence and to not expect.
consequences. Because they
Yeah.
feel too comfortable doing this
Like,
shit. This is how I feel about, even just to bring it back locally in Columbus. The way people treat people getting shot on the south side, on the west side, is different than if someone gets shot on campus, or on the east side, or on the north side.
yeah.
It's a different kind of poor. It's a different kind of where they expand their neoliberal hell of we're doing progressive and we're doing things around here. East side's more Black capitalist. It's where the arts and theaters are. It's where they want people to be, unless they're talking about gentrifying up in Franklinton. Even then, that's making a new, wider art space.
Yeah.
So it reminds me of, like, this moment to be very precise with our politic around an event, no matter what is happening, because I feel like there's a precedent for a gun being involved when someone gets shot and then people just turning away. And it's like, you only do that in the Black community. You only do that in the brown community. You only do that with marginalized people because the police have historically apprehended people with firearms before.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
a SWAT team to safely do it, not for this.
Yeah. What rules or lessons around Black masculinity and safety do you feel like you learned or had to learn growing up? And how has being radical, being revolutionary in pursuit of, like, personal liberation, collective liberation, what of those, like, lessons around masculinity and survival have you had to, like, unlearn or reshape? Because I do think, and I ask that because when I look at this instance, I'm like, I don't know, it's like that was a kid, and then his dad, who's like, I don't know, 38. I'm like, that doesn't mean you're a kid, but I'm like, that's young.
Yeah, you had your kid when
And
you were 20. Like, you were talking about that, and like there is a psychology of, like, living and doing stuff for your child, putting your whole life not on hold in, like, a terrible way, but in a way to really put some labor into.
this is meaning.
Yeah. And yeah, because that's why I love having parent friends and hearing them talk about when their kids are gonna be gone. It's like some of it's really sad, some of it's really exciting. It's like a whole new chapter in someone's life sometimes, or like a whole different space, and it really is. And I'm like, I get excited for that, and for, like, people to still have room to grow, because people learn from their kids and people teach their parents things, and it's this whole dynamic, and family can be beautiful, but it's a struggle, just like anything. But yeah, I think for me too, like, that gets into this. Oh, okay. So this makes me think of, like, one, I feel like my most notable moments of like being explicitly taught stuff about masculinity was always from um femme or gender fluid trans people in my life, and like one that was at school and in my own family, because I was just raised in a house full of women as well. So it was just, and only had sisters for a long time, up until like, only until I was like 14, 15. And even still, it was just like public school, um, which honestly I think is, public school, a haven for queer kids. It can be.
Mm.
Because it's a lot better than private schools. There was
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody just recently proposed taking all the queer and trans kids out of school in response to Trump, and making a homeschool thing with parents to run and volunteers. Not even the volunteers. Volunteers would have been even nicer than what they said. Terrible. But I felt like I was always learning the terms of masculinity on what I shouldn't do.
Hmm.
And
What were some of those things?
I don't even remember. I don't even know.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think. But I think it was like learning, like being like, all my friends were girls or trans people, so it was always like making fun of boys for doing stupid boy things, and then calling it, damn, those boys are weird. Like, that's just weird behavior. And then associating that with a certain level of masculinity.
Hmm.
And yeah, like observing things in media where it was just like arrogant bravado, and uh, those sort of aspects. But I think one thing I've learned is that, like, especially being non-binary and having a case for that, and still finding use in the terms for masculine and feminine and like the societal impacts, and have them like sure, abolish gender, but abolish the gender binary. It's more my point of view, because like the things that we consider the most hyper masculine and the most hyper feminine, to protect, to have strong will, to be assertive in those dynamics, bridge both sex of what are typical norms, especially at their extremes. I feel like. Um, how about you?
What I think it's interesting because you kind of answered by saying community shielded you from certain assumed modes of masculinity or assumed modes of behavior.
Yeah, because I have no dad. And people always said that to me too. They're like, "You're not gonna learn how to be a good man because all you hang out with are people who aren't men, and
Mm.
only had a mom growing up, and like you have a broken family." And I was like, I don't know. I have my grandpa. He was actually good, and he was just a nice, soft old man who was like,
Yeah, yeah.
he was seeing
I
some
mean,
shit.
I find that so I mean, it's interesting in the sense because I'm realizing that I kind of had sort of the same, but almost the opposite. And what I mean is like I was raised by my mom and all the women in my family, and the absence of the men in my family was always present. And that absence was always clearly tied to these were men that made the mistakes. These are men that sold drugs. They went to prison. Like you make these decisions when you're young and you have to pay for them for the rest of your life. So be careful about what you do. And even my dad, it's like he's literally I don't know. So I think for me, a lot of the lessons I got was these men are your cautionary tales. Don't do this, don't do that, and you'll probably end up in a better place than them. Which had a lot of fucked up things involved, but I think some of it was with reason. But those rules looked like I mean, I think a lot of it came into play, especially in college when I mean, I guess high school, yeah, when you're getting older and you're like understand how people see you, understand when you're walking into stores, people are going to be looking at you, that they're assuming that you're going to be doing something. Don't be keeping your hands in your pockets. Don't, like, all these things that don't exhibit behavior that sets off people's alarms. But I think also some of it was just like growing up in schools where there's carcerality all around, like you have security guards in your school. And so I feel like there were all these lessons, especially around how you perform gender for safety or for assimilation. And so there were a lot of lessons where it's like, don't let nobody fuck with you. Like, you got to be tough. You gotta defend yourself. You gotta whatever. And then there's also the know the time and the place to act like that. And then yeah, I feel like, and then especially when I went to college, I remember very much my mother was just like, don't walk any drunk white girl home, because if you're the last face that she sees, what the fuck do you expect is gonna happen? Don't walk with your hoodie up and your headphones in. You don't know who's
See,
walking behind you. You don't know who's coming up on you. You don't, and you don't. You're gonna look like the suspect.
yeah, my
And
mom
so a
didn't tell me
lot of
any of
it,
that until I had to bring that to her after Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, because that was literally he had like one syllable off the name of my teacher at the time. And I was just like, that's when I learned. I was like, okay, don't have your hoodie up when you're walking alone or when you're walking, or have the earbuds in and all that stuff. Mom was like, okay, yeah, I mean, there's things you should learn and blah, blah, blah. But she ain't know what conversation to give me.
she ain't know the
She used the
talk.
ability to defer. Every time something around like my body came up, she was like, yeah, just talk to your grandpa when he comes over this afternoon. Or at one point, my grandpa lived in our basement. So I was just like, yeah, go talk to Papa about that
Yeah.
one. And I think there's also an interesting dichotomy of being queer and having these in. So would you say like you came up in the early aughts?
Yeah, I mean, turned I mean, I yeah, I was 18 in like 2012.
Okay, yeah, and that's when I was 11.
Yeah.
So like the waves of like, even like I remember when gay marriage wasn't a thing, and like the way the culture was around me, I was like, oh, I thought this already passed by now. And so my friends like, oh my gosh, my aunt can get married now officially, and this is so
Yeah, yeah.
cool.
I mean,
And
it's also interesting that yeah, the narratives we grew up with. Because for me growing up, it was like whether or not you're sagging, whether or not you're displaying a certain kind of blackness, masculinity, because it's like baggier clothes, like all those things were trendy. But a lot of it was tied to what is the black man's body doing, and how is it criminal, or how is it trying to contribute to society, to our culture. And then
then
it's
what
like,
does it get
and
absorbed
then I think about
into?
like Tamir Rice in Cleveland, like a literal kid, and how after he was shot and killed by Cleveland police, there were people in Cleveland that were just like, I knew Tamir, me, who, it ain't no surprise. It's all these messages, and it does become interesting, because it's like with a case like Ryan Hinton, people are gonna be like, why was he with those friends in a stolen car? Why did he allegedly have those things in his pocket? Like,
And this
if
is
you're in the wrong time at the wrong place, what do you expect? And I think that's what all of these rules around, especially, I mean, it's also like gender across the binary. For women, it's like act a certain way and you might be less targeted, or
what aesthetics make you less.
you're not tempting people as much. And so it is interesting on that binary level how
What aesthetics make society, or a society impacted by our current state, feel like violence is more acceptable to do on you. Like they can get away with it. This can be an outlet for it.
yeah, are you a whore or are you a thug? And if
Either
you're a whore or
way,
a thug,
get to the get.
if you're a whore, you're gonna get fucked, and of course the cops are gonna want to harass you, and of course men are gonna want to rape you. You're fast. Like that. I mean, it's like if you look at black girls in the hood, that's like that's the fear. It's like you're gonna get pregnant early, and then your life's just gonna be over. And then for guys, it's just like you're gonna go to jail, and you're gonna be in and out of jail the rest of your life. Um, but to what you're saying, it's like this is literally this is our community. Like for people to say that or think that, it's otherizing an entire part of the community. Which I think I will say this: all of those lessons I got growing up, even if they were like for the right reason, I think because of my family's immigration to the US and what they wanted out of me, it was also about class. It was about distinguishing myself in school as someone that wanted to try hard, wanted to study. I was all of the messaging was like, "You're one of the good ones." And so that's what became confusing to me because it's like, I'm one of the good ones, but I'm not tough enough to my peers, so they won't bully me, and then I'm not man enough because I don't know how to defend myself. And so it is interesting how whatever rules you get, it isn't really about who you are, it's more about where they want you to go.
The social rigmarole.
And
I
if you're gonna end up in the streets,
because gender at its basic is about social roles,
yeah.
and that's why it's not the same thing as sex. Like
Mm,
and it's not. So when Trump makes his little like really even like incompetent thing where he's talking like executive order where gender is actually just a nice way to say sex, it's not.
mm,
And that's like not at all what that's for. Um and why when people talk about anti-authoritarian ways to engage with gender, it's about having egalitarian roles, understandings, and expressions. And that's why
yeah,
when I say I don't want to be in a binary, because I think there's so many more ways to express yourself than just calling yourself a man or just calling yourself a woman, especially for the different breadths of what exists in that.
yeah,
Like, and that's something the trans community has been going off and doing forever and literally creating that language. I mean, who was on Tumblr 2008, 2012, 2010?
yeah.
That
And it is interesting in what you're saying, like, I think I wrote I mean, I don't know, I probably got this from somewhere, but I wrote in a journal, like, every years ago, like, "Is all gender a performance?" And in those ways, I think about growing up and the parts of my masculinity that felt performative were always around other people. It was always at school because my parents told me you need to do this or that, or my friends were saying like, "Oh, you got to act like this," or people are thinking you're soft, or you got to do this or whatever. And then like even the like if I think about fourth and fifth grade and how homophobic I was, I remember there was this one boy in my grade, me and my friends bullied down, but little did I know that in fifth grade, my friends were listening to people call me gay on the side. So I'm like, y'all were helping me be homophobic while people were being homophobic. So it's just interesting because I'm like, what version of myself would I have been without the camaraderie of that shitty all guy friend group I had when I was in the fifth grade? Because if I look back, I'm like, there were so many compromises I made on a moral level. And then I went to another school, and then everyone was like, "You're gay, you're a fag, or whatever, blah, blah." And then I really had to think about my own integrity. And so it is interesting, like, so much of it is a performance because no one is, I mean, very few people are born into the world. And then you're just like, you're allowed to be whoever the fuck you want. From the start, people are telling your ass, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that. And where does that leave you? What room does that leave for you or I or anyone to just show up as themselves?
This is why I think queer revolutionary family structures are the future for humanity and will influence and revolutionize, hopefully, the best parts of that sphere of influence
Mm,
on human culture. Because I had a white mom, but my mom is queer as fuck. And I was taught
I'm thinking
growing
of all
up
the
gender
different
is a
ways you've
spectrum.
explained this, and I think
And
it's fascinating.
I'm just like, there's so many different confirmations of that.
You talk about you would see LL Cool J on
You
screen
can
to
hear
your mom.
me?
What do your mom said? She
I
say
mean,
like
she was
that's
like,
your new daddy or something.
that's your new daddy, but then I catch her watching the queerest porn, because I would sneak on her laptop when she didn't know I was gonna be on, and she wasn't planning on me hacking in and getting the passwords and social engineering my way through. I was taught very early on that gender was the spectrum. About that, it's like I was taught very early on that gender was the spectrum, and I didn't really know what that meant for me. But the more I look back on it, I'm like, oh, like some frameworks were laid down in an explicit way because I was a curious kid. I asked questions. I'm sure I was asking some crazy shit I don't even fucking remember.
How do you feel about season 2? How do you feel about, being a year and a half into this particular project space? Where do you what are you thinking about Black media right now, your place in it?
It's like when people at parks stand next to each other after they interact with me, and people are talking and standing and all moving around. I'm just like, bro, why am I being monitored right now? But in all actuality, I am not that paranoid. I just think that this year and a half has been a interesting dichotomy of a lot of trials and a lot of attempts and seeing what is sticking and not, and on multiple different levels, because it's like, is it sticking for y'all, the listener? How do we determine that? But also sticking for me, a producer, and how we're dealing with that. So definitely have more internal data, you know? Anyone has any recommendation on good analytic software, hit our line. But yeah, so just throwing a lot of shit at the wall, seeing what sticks. What sticks for the listener, what sticks for us.
How do you feel about all the white people that listen to the Dugout? Yeah, because 'cause I'm like, what are white people getting out of this podcast? Because 'Cause I'm like, I know what the blacks are getting. The blacks.
What did white people get out of this? I mean, sometimes it's really easy to forget, especially because I don't show y'all my face a lot. But I'm white. I'm Polish and German. I think there's a lot. I've it's a culture I can pull from, and I look at the history, and I'm like, I can tell you about some revolutionary Polish people for sure, especially in the Haitian Revolution. Talk about some solidarity. That's why I got some
Okay,
blue-eyed
hell
Haitians,
yeah.
because they got shipped over right after trying to get conquered or whatever. After they got conquered, they got shipped over to the colony to go be soldiers, and they're like, we're switching sides. It's a point of historical analysis that something I do whenever I'm looking at other countries or other nations or other cultures.
Yeah.
I try to find their anarchist. Like, whenever I'm looking in history, I try to find the most anti-authoritarian trends that I can find, because you tend to have better sources. You tend to have, like, more on the ground first sources from the time period or
So you're
from
thinking like
places.
white people are just listening to this as a part of their catalog of anarchist research across the different
Across the
whatevers?
diaspora, yeah, I think anarchists and non-anarchists. Because here's a question for you. Then I think it's kind of the same mentality of, what do you think people who aren't anarchists or don't really feel like they're going to
Leaning
call
towards
themselves
anarchism, yeah.
anarchists engage with this podcast?
Um, I think I think people are interested in solutions that they themselves can't theorize or present. So on one level, I imagine this podcast is really useful. Meaning like a lot of people don't even really know how to talk about abolition or think about it. A lot of people don't really know how to talk about or think about a lot of the things that are happening in the news. A lot of people don't have community to engage with like a lot of the topics that we explore in this podcast. And so I think on one level, it provides a space where people can see an example of what that could be like or look like. And I think we kind of talked about this when we started, like, oh, let's have conversations that we kind of wish would be out there. And I think when people maybe aren't as far left as we are, maybe they don't label it themselves. I'm also invested in being a part of art media that shows the extremity of the possibilities of what it might take for us to free ourselves, meaning like slaves had to revolt. That involved murder, that involved property damage. They had to flee to freedom. That involved map reading, lying to people, sneaking around, fucking decentralized networks, months and months of not even knowing where you're going, but knowing where you were going mattered more than where you fucking came from. And I think to have that grit to resort to violence to defend yourself, it's almost like resort to violence to defend yourself against an entire system and world that is against you. I don't know. I feel like I know who my comrades are if they are willing to speak to that. And I know who my comrades might not be if they can't. And I hope that this offers a space where people can be like, oh shit, like I didn't know you could say or think about it like that or whatever it is. And I'm sure there's even people. And so I think about that a lot where the folks that I've met that I guess I wouldn't really read as inherently political or organizers or whatever that I've met who say that, oh, I listen to it and I love it. It's more, I think they are viewing it as like oh, this is a chance for me to learn. But for people that don't identify as anarchist, I just hope it teaches you to like fucking pull up.
Or respect the
Really.
anarchist position when you see it, because I mean, a lot of people just they hear you're an anarchist in an organizing space, and they have so many
Yeah.
assumptions.
And what I mean when I say pull up is like defend people in your community, practice some kind of anti-fascism, call out racism when you see it, call out transphobia when you see it. Be what is it like an active bystander or whatever the fuck it is, or what's the phrase? Well,
I went over my head like,
pull up, do something. Don't sit back and watch. Like really, like I feel like
yeah,
if
don't let
I believe in
authoritarianism just
anarchism for
creep
any
in.
reason, it's like what the fuck are we gonna do about it?
Mhm.
And I feel like if you're listening to this show, might be dogs fighting over there. And so I think that's my point of curiosity because even recently, yeah, like I've just met different people that wouldn't identify as anarchists that listen to this, and I'm kind of just like, in the least. But I don't know. But that's also like what I feel about people in my life that aren't really anarchists themselves, and that could be like my organizer friends or non-organizer friends. I feel like the people that have just stood the test, and I don't know why this is turning into my who do I trust? Kind of, but it really is kind of like for people that aren't anarchists that listen to this, pull up, do something, like be about something, and be about something
If
related to
you
liberation.
stand for nothing, you will fall for anything.
Exactly. Who said that? This Malcolm X?
I don't know who the
I
fuck
think it was
said
Malcolm
that.
X.
Bro,
If
I
you
heard
stand,
that on the
it
Hamilton.
was Malcolm X. It was Malcolm X. That sounds like some, yeah. Let me turn the question back to you for people that listen to this podcast and don't identify as anarchist or
Black.
yeah, like where do you? Oh, I'm like a white dog can do whatever the fuck they want. A black dog has to be careful. That's what we're learning sitting in this park. The dog park is a microcosm for the human park, and the human park is the world. Because how many dogs, how many white dogs right over here? Like our blanket wasn't our private property. But yeah, what do you hope this podcast offers to people that don't identify as anarchist or aren't sure or
I think it offers a interesting perspective for anyone's research or understanding of what some people were talking about at a certain time period and the responses to things and what sort of histories we looked back on at this moment to influence our futures and what we prioritized and felt was important or at least enough to want to share. Because that's what I think is the most interesting. Like, no matter from if you're like a fascist to a conservative person to a progressive person who listen to this, because we have hate listeners. We have to. I mean, I listen to Federalist, fascist, conservative podcasts a couple times a month, and some of my favorite podcasts are about terrible people and like weird little guys. Shout out weird little guys. So I know there are people who are doing it to get intel on what they consider dangerous, which are some people anarchists, and especially the black ones. So yeah, I'm gonna give the best research I can. Put it right out. Give that raw, what's it called? A first person, a first historical, first person source, first. Yeah, what do you have to say to the white people? I mean, to the not black people. Or what do you think? What do you think about them? Because you know their ears are itching right now with this in their earbuds. They're
I think the internet's a wild place. I think one, it's interesting that people listen to this and they have an idea of us or whatever. That's interesting. Two, um, I mainly make this as like an expression of my mind, my brain. And so if you're here to like learn, you're taking a lot, like blah blah blah, you're a visitor. You're a visitor. Thank you for visiting. And I think visiting is great, but it's like, what are you gonna do with it? How many white people have I known in my life where I'm like, woo, you get to hear me blah 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 talk about all this stuff. Are you gonna do anything? Are you gonna do anything about it? And so I think for me, I just hope that people engaging in this are, one, learning something, but it's helping them show up in their life a little bit differently.
Yeah, everybody go out, go read again, go read Against Innocence, Jackie Wang, Wilderson, Conversation, go fucking,
Go to a
go
bar,
research
go to a
Brinsley,
bar
Isaiah Brinsley.
and argue with some white elite or whatever the fuck. Like, get
Study
scrappy.
John Brown.
Study John
Like,
Brown, get
really study
scrappy.
John Brown.
And so, yeah, I think it's interesting. But I also, I mean, this is where I constantly am as an artist. Like, I want to make something that's rooted in a certain place. And then once you put it out into the world, of course, you can set all the intentions you want. And sometimes where it lands, sometimes it can kind of break your heart where you're like, oh, it's not landing where I wanted it or whatever. And I'm not even saying that specifically about this, but I do think it's interesting to make something long term and to know that we have this deep and intimate relationship with this project. But for people in taking it, it's much more casual or it's educational or whatever it is. And so I hope for non-Black people listening to this, like, yeah, I just hope you can be about it in your life outside of listening to this podcast. And for the Black people,
Yeah, what about for mixed sisters and brothers?
for them,
Yeah, what do we got to say?
I mean, I don't.
Happy Black History Month. Every month is Black History Month, unless you're racist.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for the mixed audience, I mean, I'm 15%.
Mixed was my gender neutral way of saying sibling.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, okay. Oh, okay.
But yeah.
So wait, what's the question?
Yeah, what do you have to say to the Black people?
Oh, to the Black
Listen.
people, think it's our responsibility right now to not be citizens. And what I mean by that is figure out the ways in your life that you can study and actualize being antagonistic to the state. Hey listeners, this is Prince here, and I'm here to give you a reminder that if you want to support the Dugout and our anarchist musings about the world, politics, and culture, you can find us in a couple of ways. Our anarchist podcast is shaking things up, and we want you to be a part of the action. So here's how you can support. When you support us on Patreon, you get early access to episodes and special live streams. So to do that, head to patreon.com/the Dugout Pod. Throw in your support and let's keep the vibes going. And then if you want to follow us on social media, on Instagram or TikTok, find us at The Dugout Pod to hear our behind the scenes musings. Sometimes we share some weird reading. Sometimes we're smoking it down and you can join us. But in general, sharing is caring. So let people you know about the Dugout Podcast. If there's particular episodes that you think someone might get some kind of wisdom or knowledge from, send it to them. And find us online. I just really hope that Black people listen to this, like, fuck being allegiant to this country. Fuck all the bullshit where it's like, we just need to sit back and let the other people handle it. And oh my gosh, the white people need to go out and be the boycotters. What the fuck? How do y'all think we got the freedom? How do y'all think we got the freedom? And honestly, if you're listening to this, you probably aren't there, but I just hope that we continue to build our like intimate spaces of safety, like friendships, comradeships, community. And I hope we figure out who we can survive and liberate ourselves with. And I really, really hope that this podcast offers a number of visions around that, different ways that we can have conversations. Because I do think it's important for Black people to really question our both our subjugation in this project, the American project, and our participation. And I'm just hoping that this podcast offers a lot of different angles for how we can really be critical of, I don't know, the work we're doing on this land and within this
Yeah.
project,
So I
against
really
this
think about
project.
this project too. I mean, it's interesting to also have like the diasporic, and that is a part of Blackness in different levels on Turtle Island. And I think that's an interesting conversation panel that we should have is the Black anarchist diaspora, the people we know still internationally in different international diasporic spots, because that's something I thought was interesting, was how that's a central point too, in my opinion, Black anarchism itself, is that like rootedness in where you are, but where you're from and where you want to go.
What do you mean?
As like
Like, it's important in Black anarchism because we've had so much stripped away from us, but we're also simultaneously connected to this diaspora, and how
I mean, there's
that's
different
like
levels
something to pull from, or
there's different levels of like the point of relation to colonial attack that even that blackness gets like made to, like blackness and landlessness and being non-citizen and then being granted citizenship, whether you were family was brought here 500 years ago, the intermingling of that versus folks whose parents came willingly in the 90s, or folks who came willingly in the 80s, and the different levels of that explains different Black experiences in the US, and how like to have a Black podcast in the US is diasporic. Even if you think about like the Pan-African movements that are like, we're getting back in culture, back in touch with different cultures in Africa.
yeah. I mean, it also just makes me, it makes me think about like when you see a Black body, you can assume Black, but it contains so many different things. It's like we're just two people, but even our bodies' lives represent all these different parts of the diaspora, even just within us. And then it's like if you add a third person, I'm like, damn, you got most of the world. Wait, you gotta get somebody who's part Asian on here. The unexamined life is not worth living. Can't remember who said that, but it's a very famous quote.
I don't like that quote.
Really?
No. What do you mean?
The unexamined life is not worth living. You're just going around, you're not thinking about nothing, not reflecting on anything.
Oh.
A well-lived life involves regret.
Okay.
It involves...
I thought it was like you need somebody to witness you.
No.
Like the things I do when I'm alone don't matter because I'm not I'm like, fuck you mean, bro? I got me, myself, and I got integrity. I got...
No, I don't think it has anything to do with other people examining. It's like,
okay, I like that.
if you live without any kind of interiority, are you living? And that's the question for this country. Yeah. Like, I want to be bold enough to regret things. I want to be present enough to say some shit where I'm like, damn, I should have maybe clipped it back a little bit. That was a little too much. But it's like, that to me is like, you're taking some swings, you're taking some misses, you're making some mistakes, and to reassess, I think that's how you prove you're alive, I think. So everyone listening to this, do that. This started with a poem. Sit down now and write a poem. My mother told me, go from there.
I'm sorry, mama. One more time. I'm sorry, mama. I never meant to hurt you. Never meant to make you cry, but tonight I'm cleaning out my closet. One more time. You're on the dugout. We talk about a couple things like freedom, unity, and struggle. Where is your mind?